I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board on Monday, December 2nd. Call to order, and we do have quorum present for the board. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board with a public comment? Not a presentation, but a public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes from our November 4th meeting. I assume you've all read and analyzed them. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Do I hear a second? Okay, any discussion? All in favor on approving the minutes as written? Aye. Okay, and then we are going to switch 4 and 5 on our agenda a little bit. However, if Representative Hintz does arrive during a portion of the presentation, we have 4 presentations from the students, and so we will complete whatever presentation we're on and give him the floor, and then we'll go back and finish if that should happen. I haven't heard that he's not coming, but I haven't heard that he is either, so so we'll see what happens. So with that, I would really like to welcome all of the students who have worked so hard for us all semester. We love that. The UW Oshkosh Senior Seminar is going to be giving us student presentations, and I'm going to ask their instructor, Jim Feldman, to please come up and introduce them.
Yeah, I'm Jim Feldman. I'm the director of the Environmental Studies program. I just want to thank the Sustainability Advisory Board for giving us the time to work on these. So the students have prepared, as you can tell in our title, 4 proposals. All of them drawn from the recently completed city sustainability plan. And so that's my entire introduction. I'm going to turn it over to the first of our groups, and we'll hold questions and comments on each of the presentations until the end, if that's okay. So thank you guys again. Gordon's walking in, so we'll just hold off.
Okay, you guys just take a break. We'll be fine.
And with that, take a break.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Welcome. Welcome, Gordon. We're so glad you could make it. Representative Hintz, thank you so much. You walked in just as we were ready for you.
Oshkosh Community Media.
But would you like to sit here, or would you like to stand at the mic?
I'd rather sit.
Okay, not at all. Come, sit
I
next to me.
didn't bring a slideshow, and didn't know
That's
Jim
okay.
Feldman was going to have all of his students here. But I'm glad, because we need more people.
And they all care about what we do.
And more of the innovation has happened at the local level, and that's the fact that we have a sustainability board, I think, speaks volumes for the fact that it's a priority in this community. It should be a priority for communities throughout the state, and I think it has. I don't know everybody here. I'm Gordon Hintz. I'm the state rep and the Assembly Democratic leader in the legislature. I was asked to come in and kind of give you an update on what's happening at the state level along the lines of sustainability. And I think one of the things, again, that we've seen is local government has moved faster than the state government in recent years. But that in general, I think, one, it makes sense. Two, I think the public is increasingly demanding it. And in fact, even when I talk to businesses, agriculture, other groups out there, there's more of an ethos for sustainability because it makes good sense, but also because you're seeing changing perceptions and understanding out there that's what the public demands. And I always say that to young people when we see things changing in terms of perception, that some things change very quickly, some things take longer. Unfortunately, we have not seen a priority at the state level in terms of plans for sustainability until recent times, where the governor has used the power that he has to sort of say that, they're going to make some commitments with at least the administrative branch or the executive branch at the state level to be able to have target goals for what they're going to be trying to do with all of their state facilities. And again, I had my staff prioritize that there are 6,700 facilities in the state of Wisconsin with 87 million square feet statewide. That includes your campuses, UW system, and other major and non-major buildings. So it is not insignificant to say that the state of Wisconsin, moving forward with Governor Evers when he signed Executive Order 38 that lays out a series of goals aimed at lowering Wisconsin's carbon footprint and making the state a sustainable energy user. Again, part of what government does when it leads in this case is try to demonstrate that these things are possible, doing our part nationally and globally. And so the order creates the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy. It makes the state a goal of being carbon-free by 2050. It has the state abide by the carbon reduction goals of the Paris Climate Accord, which of course is contrary to some of the things we're hearing in the news today about where our country is going. But I think you're seeing a number of states decide that it's in the best interests of our country in general of if states can act, complying with it even if the nation's not. Developing a clean energy plan for all state agencies, promoting clean energy workforce training, fostering research and business development within the renewable energy sectors, setting energy efficiency standards for all state buildings. And looking at trying to, I know a number of communities are probably further along than this, given that it just simply hasn't been a priority. And increasingly, like I said, you're seeing both public demand and market demand for sustainable approaches to both buildings and business practices. It's just that state government, instead of being a leader, hasn't been until this point. And so these are issues that shouldn't be politicized, but increasingly they have. And so, I guess the question is, well, what does this executive order ultimately mean when you lay out these goals? And again, people in leadership positions like the governor are saying that these are going to be a priority. These are the things that we hope to, accomplish and lead on by highlighting, by promoting, by getting it out there about what is ultimately possible. But I think one of the challenges is, as a former member of the State Building Commission who, approves the capital budget for the infrastructure in our state, in the lame duck session, the previous legislature and Governor Walker, obviously took considerable control away from the executive branch, including anything financial. The Joint Finance Committee kind of said that they have oversight over. And so when we used to do, for instance, when I was on the building commission, we approved Sage Hall here at UW Oshkosh, and it was at the time the greenest building in the state of Wisconsin. And there were some things that we wanted to be able to put into that project that may not have been the most cost effective, but that were priorities of the institution at the time. And I think over long term definitely saved money and were a model in that regard. My concern is that while the governor has laid out and has directed state agencies, including the Division of State Facilities that oversees a lot of the building projects, that there might be some micromanaging of these decisions when they come to the Building Commission for approval of spending, if they are seen as arbitrary or not cost effective, or we've seen sort of a unfortunate debate over things that make a lot of sense, that are science-based, that seem to be argued against for political purposes. So one of the things beyond the, part of the reason the governor did the executive order beyond abiding by the Paris Accords and reducing carbon was to also accomplish, the governor had broader environmental goals. He's mentioned clean drinking water, regulation of the industrial farming runoff, lead line replacement, PFAS cleanup, which I know we've talked about here in the city of Oshkosh, and having a state electricity reduction goal. Those were all things that were included in the budget that were ultimately removed. And so I think the governor's executive action is trying to do what he can do outside of the budget process to restore these things and make them a higher priority. Our timing for this meeting is pretty good in that my colleague, Representative Neubauer from Racine, is introducing a package of bills tomorrow aimed at state effort to address the effects of climate change in building Wisconsin's new economy, including carbon sequestration, energy efficiency and weatherization in Wisconsin public schools, financing for clean energy projects, and having a consideration to the social cost of carbon when the Public Service Commission approves of a construction of a new utility scale energy generation facility. And so I haven't, my staff reminded me of this today, I haven't a chance to go through all of those things, but I know she's doing a press conference is sort of rolling these things out. And while I don't expect them to be completely embraced, again, I remind people that a lot of the ideas and things that we're seeing happen in other states and in other countries were just mere ideas a few years ago. And I think the public consciousness is catching up. And so today's ideas are tomorrow's realities and movements. And so, again, I think the big part of what Governor Evers done is try to get state government to lead the way, to demonstrate, and that these things are a priority, and then giving us a plan. The biggest investments that state government can do are over the long term. We get focused on the election cycle or 2-year budgets, but the reality is the biggest investments are sustained, in infrastructure, education, and in this case, sustainability, and it requires multiple governments to build off of that. And, we've seen when we're successful in the past, it's because we have had 20-year plans that laid this out, and I'm happy to see the administration make it a priority. And so with that, I will, I don't know if you had any questions or things. I may have to get back to you if they are super specific, but, I know places like communities like Oshkosh have not waited for the state to take the lead, and I'm grateful for that. And I think that's true with communities around the state. And again, our partner at UW Oshkosh has been a major leader within the UW system. Administration here has always reminded me when I was on the building commission that we were greener and more sustainable than UW Madison. So take that, Jim Feldman. Well, you can claim either one.
Can you tell us what the status of, I think it's AB 177 is, it involves the plastic bags?
Was there a bill to overturn the? So a few years ago, the state preempted local government from enacting a ordinance banning the use of plastic bags, as we've seen in different communities around the country. It was sort of, I think, as it got attention in many communities, the state sort of, preempted it, saying, well, before it even can be done at the local level, it's been somewhat of the continuation of attacks on local control beyond just restrictive, spending constraints, but really getting into policy that shouldn't be done at the state level if it's a priority in each community. And so there's a proposal to repeal that. I would like to see a number of things repealed that have been done to local governments, given that the priorities of each community, at least the ones that don't have a financial, cost, although I know the city manager and Councilman Cummings or Herman would prefer to see us give full autonomy back to local government. So I don't know. I don't expect it to get a lot of attention, but it feels like there's more awareness of the impact on plastic bags every time there's one of those global stories about anything having to do with plastic or however long it takes for these bags to degrade in our site. And you're just seeing it from people out there that are obviously bringing their own bags. I just came from Pick and Save. Not endorsing any grocer.
Of course, you used your own bags there.
I did. I didn't have enough bags, so I used a paper bag in addition to my fashionable.
Paper, good. A renewable resource.
A renewable
Thank
resource.
you.
So.
We appreciate that.
So I think we've got time left in the session. It would be nice to at least have a hearing. I think if I see you've got an action item here to contact
Yeah, I was just
the
gonna
chair
give
of the
this to you
committee.
because it says to contact my representative. Now, technically, I know you're not, but you're Oshkosh. I unfortunately live 6 blocks outside of his district.
I'll take your call.
I know you will. Thank you.
So,
Do any of you have questions for Gordon tonight? The table? Or?
I'll just say, we're not unique. Minnesota has been also taking action, again, trying to lead the way and trying to find ways in future procurement and other things to make sure that they're incorporating the goals of sustainability. So, the best way I think to look at it is long-term. And again, I think the best thing that a lot of the innovation that's happening in government right now is happening at the local level. And so restoring control or not getting in the way, and then trying to, I think, lead with a priority and with the Office of Sustainability is a good way for the governor to at least change the tide. So.
Is this executive order something that cannot happen legislatively?
I mean, it's a little complicated because of the changes that were made, and that was something I couldn't get answered here today, given that when you talk about the facilities, both new construction and, renovation, if the goals that are laid out to be met become part of the planning process for design, for projects, and it gets wrapped up in politics, that it costs a little more upfront. I mean, we used to do energy efficiency projects where we would actually borrow money against the savings on doing new windows or other things that would save on utilities over time. Right now, it's real touchy, in Madison, where sometimes the goals, unfortunately, get wrapped up in, well, we don't want the governor to be able to do this. And unfortunately, with things like sustainability, the environment, climate change, science, there's things that shouldn't be debatable seem to be wrapped up in politics. And so we'll see. I think it lays out goals. I think the state, under his lead, the different agencies will certainly pursue this. But I think when you're talking about bigger projects, the question will be the purse strings in terms of when they're approving projects, if there is money up front or if there are things in the design that are viewed as unnecessary or costly or whatever, will those things be pulled out, denied, micromanaged, like we've seen in sort of similar instances, not related to sustainability, but for instance, the issues with the Attorney General and settlements right now. You've got a bunch of non-lawyers that are trying to oversee legal settlements because they don't trust the democratically elected Attorney General, and it's ground things to a halt.
Understood. You had mentioned about using the savings from an initiative to fund the initiative, basically. Is there some way that could be tied to green jobs?
We'll see. I mean, I think there's some component of the bills that are coming out tomorrow to try to look at, incentivizing it. I mean, one of the things that's changed early in my time in the legislature under Governor Doyle, if you remember, we had a renewable energy goal that was exceeded. And at the time, with both wind, solar, it was incentivized because the market needed it. And while it hasn't been, we have not had a renewable energy standard or goal, in the last 8 years. The private market has responded because it's become more cost effective. And again, because the public has reflected that these are, when I talk to energy utilities, they're pursuing it because it's cost effective, but because it's popular with the public as well. And so, in terms of what else the state can do, I'm not saying that the market is moving as fast as some people would like it, but, I guess I'll have to see. I'll wait till the package, comes tomorrow, because I think they are talking about things that, would loan money up front to be paid back later, green banks, Greta's very thorough on these things. So I think we're seeing things, maybe some of the best ideas that have been done at the state level, some of the things that perhaps were discussed at the national level that aren't moving. And one of the things I wanted to get done today that I didn't get a chance to before the meeting was sort of looking at some of the best practices in other states to see how successful they've been and perhaps how far we've fallen behind. And again, I know that there are communities in the state that have really moved forward on their own, and usually if you get enough of them, hopefully the state will follow suit if they're not leading.
I know that some of us at the table drive hybrids. We kind of had a little sticker shock when we got our registration renewal. Can you explain a little bit the rationale for that, whether you believe in it or not? I don't.
So one of the concerns has been how do we pay for our transportation infrastructure at the state level? It's primarily been paid for with gas tax revenue. It used to go up with inflation until 2005 or 2006, so it used to automatically adjust. But the reality is cars are more fuel efficient. In some places, people are driving less, so revenue has been flat or even declining, and expenses have gone up as inflation for construction has gone up. And then, of course, while the numbers are still pretty low, at least for electric vehicles, year over year, they're exceedingly, high. And so the question is, what does the future look like, and how do we continue to try to generate revenue to pay for things? Electric vehicles is one thing because they don't pay any gas tax. I think hybrids get a little more complicated in that I think if my dad's Toyota Corolla gets like 44 miles to a gallon, which is pretty close to what a hybrid gets, right? Maybe? Mm-hmm. Except they are not subject to the hybrid fee. And so the application of that was sort of seen as, well, we're going to charge an additional fee to hybrid and electric vehicles because they're getting out from under paying the gasoline tax that others would pay.
Some people might feel that's punitive.
I don't want to say that it was. Yeah, right, but again, it isn't about. I understand that people voluntarily pay more to drive a hybrid vehicle because they have goals that are about reducing emissions. That's not what the goal is at the state level to fund infrastructure. And so while I'm sympathetic to, I would say my concern is more, is it fair to apply it on hybrid vehicles, given that there are hybrids that certainly get higher fuel efficiency than the same vehicle would if it weren't a hybrid. Its fuel efficiency may be lower than a non-hybrid that is not paying that fee. And so I think that is, more of I know it was viewed by some as we shouldn't be penalized for driving a more fuel efficient vehicle, but you also have to remember that a lot of the people stuck driving older, less fuel efficient vehicles, are lower income in nature. So it's regressive to, allow people to pay less with hybrid and electric vehicles that they can afford, while others are stuck paying for infrastructure. So it's complicated. My guess is the state will have to continue to adjust its revenue for infrastructure as the changing demographics and dynamics of who's driving and what they're driving and how to best pay for these things. There are some that I don't know how they applied the hybrid was fair. Electric vehicles, I understood more. If we were looking at true user fees, I think you'd have to look at weight, just given that that's where a lot of the damage to our roads comes from. And there's some states that do more of a weight-based registration fee. But we also make things in Northeast Wisconsin, and those things have to get to market, and there are, considerations for those things. So some of them are parked in Oshkosh. Yeah, some of them just are. So I'm sensitive to that as well. There's not an easy answer, and as much as I was critical of inaction and coming up with a dedicated funding source, I do recognize nobody out there is saying I can't wait to pay more in gas and I can't wait to pay for a hybrid fee to do my part. And of course, I know locally the same discussions are how to best pay for roads and streets, and I'm not going to step in that one. But I'll just say I recognize it's complicated.
Look at my shoes.
But I hope whatever they do, it's sustainable.
I hope so too. What I'm hearing you say on everything is it's complicated. And
It's more complicated than I think sometimes we want it to be. Again, I think we traditionally say the more you drive, the more you should pay, which is why the gas tax still seems like it's fair. There are real problems when it comes to things like tolling, unless you can toll just Illinois residents or anybody with a Bears or Cubs sticker, but that you can't do that apparently.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fair, does it?
No.
Hey, does anybody else have anything they would like to ask? Well, we'd like to invite you to stay for as much.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was going to go right away, and I probably wasn't quite ready to go. But if you ever have questions as a committee or ideas or things that I can respond to or ask, and I think some of them that I didn't have clarification on by tonight, I will try to get them, and I guess look for some of the press tomorrow related to the proposals that are coming out. And glad we've got such a big group tonight, and good to see the gears are turning in everybody's heads.
Yeah, we're going to make most of them work.
Oh, they're here to you're assigning projects?
Well,
No, they're
no,
reporting.
they've been working for the last semester, so they're going to give us their senior reports now. So
You should have let me
that's
go
what-
after.
That's what you
I would have- I could have then just made these vague allusions to, as you heard earlier, the opportunities are abound. So,
television.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Yes, thank you.
I'm bringing a slideshow next time.
Are ya? Okay, we'll hold you to that. Okay, Jim, I guess we're back to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Representative Hintz. There are actually several of the presentations tonight do follow really quite directly on some of the comments the Representative Hintz just made. So I made my introduction before, so I'll just go ahead and turn it over to the students. Thanks again to the Sustainability Advisory Board for making this possible.
Good evening, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to our proposals tonight. I'm Austin, this is Claire, and this is Julia. And we hope you find the information presented useful and can relate all proposals back to the 2020 City of Oshkosh Sustainability Plan. Our initial proposal investigated the implementation of solar panels on City of Oshkosh-owned buildings. While our presentation today is still discussing this, our findings indicate that implementation of solar panels on city-owned buildings is a long-term goal, and further collaboration and research is needed for a successful transition into solar energy. With fossil fuels becoming more scarce and climate change on the rise, establishing renewable energy plans for cities is vital for the future. One of the worries with converting to renewable energy is the loss of efficiency in production achieved from using fossil fuels. Currently, around 85% of the United States relies on its fossil fuels as an energy source. Solar is a key factor in gaining energy independence for the City of Oshkosh and will improve the quality of life by providing sustainability practices to meet environmental, economic, and social needs of the present without compromising needs of the future. In order to achieve this goal, the city is in need of changes that are overall more sustainable and promote a greener future. Currently, Wisconsin has an average of around 90 million metric tons of carbon emissions per year. Transitioning to solar panels can reduce these emissions drastically by reducing the total amount of carbon produced. When converting to solar energy, the amount of energy being produced will cost less compared to that of current energy bills, and this switch will be able to provide sufficient energy to users while also reducing energy bills along the way, which positively affects the community's economy while promoting more sustainable practices. We will now look at the growing social acceptance of solar energy.
The general findings on solar energy in the public opinion polls we studied were positive. One study conducted by the Pew Research Center from 2011 through 2017 found that 2/3 of Americans give priority to developing alternative energy over fossil fuels. To further analyze the graphs on the screen, younger people tend to favor prioritizing alternative energy sources at 75%. However, older generations still prioritize it at 50%. Next, we are going to look at the divide between Republican and Democratic opinions on solar. The poll found that while Democratic voters prioritize the development of these alternative energy technologies more, both parties have majority support for solar. This shows that there is a continued priority in the development of these alternative energy technologies between both parties. Now, we have a poll illustrating that about 65% of Americans prioritize the development and implementation of alternative energy sources. On the contrary, only 27% of Americans favor the expansion of the fossil fuel industry. In addition, as solar prices continue to fall to improve technologies and learn proficiency in manufacturing nationwide, it is predicted that over the next 5 years, the overall cost of solar in Wisconsin will fall by 32%. In conclusion, there is a lot of support and interest in renewable energy sources, and solar is one of the most popular. Now we will look at the possible financial opportunities to subsidize the cost of solar implementation for the City of Oshkosh. Some grant opportunities. One of the major obstacles in utilizing solar energy is funding, and in this regard, there are several opportunities to subsidize the initial cost of implementation. Open funding opportunities through the Office of Solar Technologies is expected to award $130 million to over 80 projects nationwide by the end of 2019. More specifically, their initiative, Sunshot, began in 2011 as a way to reduce the total cost to photovoltaic solar energy systems by about 75% by 2020. For example, in 2014, Eau Claire adopted solar-friendly citywide practices and was awarded funding through the Sunshot Grow Solar Partnership. This allowed their city to become a regional and national leader in city solar projects. There are some opportunities for local governments like the City of Oshkosh to advance their knowledge and funding opportunities, including another model which Julia will introduce.
While grant opportunities is one way to finance projects in the city and other municipalities, several professionals in the solar field stated that third-party financing was the most successful way to make the finances work. Third-party financing is essentially a contractual agreement between the city and a private solar company to build, install, and maintain the solar panel systems with little to no upfront cost to the City of Oshkosh. In these agreements, the third party owns the solar panel system and, under contract, agrees to sell the energy produced by the system back to the city at a fixed rate, typically below market value. The economic incentive to establish a relationship with a third party and implement solar energy on city-owned buildings would greatly reduce the month-to-month cost and decrease the return on investment timeline. We see this financial model successfully implemented in Fayetteville, Arkansas, with their solar array project. The city put forth an energy action plan similar to the Oshkosh's sustainability plan and declared that the city of Fayetteville would achieve 100% clean and renewable energy by 2030. To achieve this, the city implemented a solar array project utilizing a third-party financing model. The project transitioned the city's electric utility consumption from an initial 16% renewable energy to 72% renewable. The graph displayed on the screen illustrates how the solar project moved the city of Fayetteville away from fossil fuel energy sources and increased the energy independence. In addition, the city was able to reduce their carbon footprint and significantly reduce the timeline for their return on investment. While third-party financing has proven to be a critical component with nonprofits and funding solar projects, the language in the Wisconsin State Legislature is extremely broad and poses a threat to the future of third-party financing in the state of Wisconsin. The city of Milwaukee attempted a third-party financing model with Eagle Point Solar to install 6 solar panels on city-owned buildings. However, We Energies challenged the financial model, claiming that because Eagle Point Solar was not a regulated utility provider, the agreement would be deemed illegal. Eagle Point Solar is confident in their ability to fight Wisconsin utility companies in advocacy for third-party financing throughout the state. This case will be critical to watch as the outcome will set a precedence for the entire state of Wisconsin and see if nonprofit entities, like cities, have an additional way of financing solar projects.
The company Sunvest in May of this year conducted a survey on the Oshkosh Senior Center in collaboration with the city planning department. Their preliminary findings showed where they would put the panels, the upfront costs, the benefits, and the return on investment timeline, and how much energy and cost savings would result in implementation. This is an example of solar panel viability in the city of Oshkosh that can be used as a model for future research. Indicated on the chart on the screen, we see that over 30 years following solar installation on the Senior Center building, the energy utility cost savings will be over $115,000. This project illustrated the growing interest of solar installation in city departments, and further collaboration is necessary to make solar feasible. We followed up with private solar companies, including Sunvest, to get their expert opinion on solar installation on the city-owned buildings in the city of Oshkosh.
Sunvest and Eland Electric provided information regarding site selection and feasibility for solar projects within the city. Chris Collins and Jesse Michalski both recommended that energy-intensive buildings will create the most productive solar panel projects. In this regard, Eland Electric is currently working with us to determine the best city-owned buildings in which to implement solar, which will be further outlined in our report. Using criteria based on yearly solar exposure, roof type, electric utility usage, and price, we will be able to provide estimates regarding initial cost to the city and the return on investment. Utilizing Project Sunroof, which is a program that uses Google aerial and thermal imaging software, we were able to determine a few buildings that fit the requirements outlined by the solar companies. We have displayed the wastewater treatment plant, the police department, and City Hall. The yellow color indicates high solar exposure, which will increase the efficiency if any solar is to be installed on these buildings. In addition, it is a great resource for further investigation into solar appropriate buildings. Looking at the rest of the state, Madison has made some strides in city solar projects.
Madison's plan is to create a state of balance between the natural and built environments where humans, plants, and animal communities live in harmony. One of the first steps in doing this is educating the community on the importance of renewables and why the transition is so important for the future. Some examples from Madison are the Alicia Ashman Library and Engineering Service Building. Both follow the LEED standard, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. To fund these projects, the City of Madison is collaborating with a solar developer within the region who is fostering relationship building and gaining outside inventorship to implement solar projects throughout the city. In addition, Madison is a city-led initiative that incentivizes homeowners, landlords, and businesses in Madison to install rooftop solar electric systems. On a broader scale of looking in Wisconsin, we can see many other cities taking the path for a more sustainable future. Worldwide, climate change is becoming a growing concern. Switching to renewable energy allows Oshkosh to reduce its overall carbon footprint while also promoting that we live here and support the use of sustainable energy. Most of the major Wisconsin cities listed on the screen are committing to 100% clean renewable energy by the set target date of the year 2050. Not many cities in northeast Wisconsin have transitioned yet, so this is a prime opportunity for Oshkosh to lead by example when switching to solar. While additional research and collaboration is needed for solar to be a feasible option for the city of Oshkosh, we hope the research presented to you today illustrates the benefits and ways for the city of Oshkosh to move forward with solar projects in the future. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brianna Baszler. This is Megan Edwards, Abby Riedel, and Joy Brantner. Today we'll be suggesting a rewording in the current Oshkosh City Ordinance regarding lawn care and implementation of native vegetation around the city. We'll be talking about the current problem along with the soil, water, and biodiversity benefits of native landscaping, as well as public opinion barriers and education. And we'll conclude with our recommendation. As mentioned, we are addressing Oshkosh's municipal code regarding what is now called designated nature areas. Upon much research, we have reviewed the code and compared to other Wisconsin cities and determined we can greatly improve the wording of Oshkosh's ordinance. There is also a lack of native vegetation represented at city buildings. For one example of poor wording in the ordinance, the current code requires all lawns to be cut under 8 inches except in these designated nature areas. However, in Section 1744, Part D, under the nature area rules, it states the owner shall agree to hold the city harmless for all acts necessary to enforce its weed cutting and lawn care regulations. This gives the impression that if the city wants to, they can cut down the nature areas when they deem necessary, even if that was not the intended goal. We would like to change this wording to something more precise and clear, while at the same time tell city residents that native landscaping is a viable alternative to traditional lawns and can save you money in the long run. However, we would like to note that we do not aim to abolish the 8-inch rule, but rather alter the section under there regarding these so-called nature areas to promote native landscaping as an alternative to traditional lawns. By using native landscaping on a broader scale, you can lower the overall use of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Native plants also have the added benefit of uptaking some of those toxins to purify the water and soil quality. Another added benefit to native plants is reducing runoff. The deep root structures in these plants, shown in the figure, hold the soils in place, thus better reducing the amount of runoff and suspended solids within water bodies like the Fox River or Lake Winnebago. According to the Wisconsin DNR, these water bodies are in the state impaired waters list, so native landscaping can aid in those water clarity efforts. Going off this deep root structure, due to the added hole on the soils, there's also less erosion of the topsoil. Right now, it takes over 100 years to naturally create 1 inch of topsoil, and you can never make more land, so native landscaping can aid in those conservation efforts. If we take a look at the figure on the screen, in the red box, it shows what most lawn root structures look like in Oshkosh, and then we can compare it to native plants and clearly see there's a huge difference in strength. Next, Megan will provide us with information on biodiversity along with examples of current Wisconsin city ordinances.
So we heard from Brianna how native plants can affect soil and water health. A native ecosystem can also be positively influenced on, a native ecosystem can also have positive influence on biodiversity. Numerous studies have found that an increase in common native pollinators can also have a positive impact when caterpillar species are also present. More specifically, looking at in a 2011 observational study conducted in central Arizona, biodiversity on native bird species was at its highest when landscaping mimicked that of native ecosystems. This can be seen in Figure 5, in which when the number of shrubs and trees increases in the neighborhood, bird species richness also increases. The city of Oshkosh is noted as a bird city, this providing a source of pride for its citizens. So, by increasing the number of native plants in the city, we further protect our bird populations. Outlined on this slide is an abbreviated version of the current Oshkosh Ordinance regulating lawn maintenance. In an attempt to regulate lawn management on a broad scale, the ordinance is demonstrating a bias towards traditional turf grass. In contrast, the handout in front of you illustrates what we feel would be an appropriate change to current ordinance. It's developed based off similar ordinances in other Wisconsin cities. All of these ordinances are going to be further discussed in our final report. Whitewater provides a viable example for a potential ordinance regulating lawn care. The city clearly outlines native landscaping as a viable alternative to traditional turf grass. The ordinance also notes that native plants exceed 50% of the land area must file a notice rather than an application, which is currently utilized by the city of Oshkosh. This easing any possible strain on landowners wanting to utilize native plantings on a broad scale. Moving slightly closer to home, the city of Neenah recently adopted a progressive lawn care ordinance that promotes the use of native plantings while addressing concerns surrounding maintenance and potential misinterpretations of city expectations. The city continues to regulate the overgrowth of vegetation, specifically with turf grass, and the control of noxious weeds. They go on to state that the poor maintenance of vegetation can decrease the value of nearby properties and threaten public health and safety. This again being in direct reference to the overgrowth of noxious weeds and non-native species. Further on in the ordinance, they clearly outline definitions of what qualifies as native landscaping and encourage its widespread use as a source of preservation, restoration, and soil and water conservation. Following, Abby will discuss barriers surrounding public opinion and education on the subject as a tool for its promotion.
So the biggest barrier with this proposal is public opinion on landscaping. Many people don't mind mowing, watering, and fertilizing their turf grass lawns because they want their property to look nice for their community. An unmowed landscape tends to lower the property value of the home and the homes around it, so people want to keep that clean look of a mowed lawn. There are varying opinions on this issue, but most people generally don't want to get rid of their turf grass lawns because they like the clean look and functionality that they provide. Aesthetics were found to be the most important to people. Some don't like native species because of their weed-like appearance or unmanaged look. These barriers can be overcome through educating the public on these topics. While more and more people are trying to be more sustainable, many don't know how their landscaping affects the environment. Clean-cut turf lawns have become a part of our culture and everyday life, so it's hard to mess with that way of thinking. But through education, we can show people how and why shallow-rooted turf grasses cut short are a flooding hazard with low biodiversity and have a very negative impact on the environment. And with that, people aren't aware of the benefits of tall native plants with deep roots that soak up and filter rainwater and offer a rich habitat for many species. Some of these species are considered undesirable by some. Bees, for example, are not a highly liked species because when provoked, they sometimes do sting and some people are allergic to them. However, they are very important to our ecosystem for pollination, which is important for healthy crop growth and our food supply. If we just let them be in their natural habitat, we should be able to coexist. Our research shows that even something as simple as a sign like these showing that the area is a certified wildlife habitat or a monarch way station, or even a sign like the one on the right that explains in detail what the landscape is enough to show people that the species there are not unintentional and unmanaged, but rather very intentional, beneficial, and beautiful. Now, Jory is going to give an example of someone who transformed their yard with native landscaping and then wrap up with our final recommendation.
Misty McPhee is an environmental studies professor at UW-Oshkosh. She has successfully implemented native vegetation into her yard, replacing the traditional turf grass. She utilized cardboard and mulch that she got from the city to kill the grass, and then planted clippings of the native vegetation. Gathering seeds is another inexpensive way to obtain native species. Overall, Misty spent roughly $600 for her roughly 3,000 square foot yard, and the only maintenance she does to upkeep the appearance is to weed and trim as necessary. She has not gotten any complaints from her neighbors about the appearance of her landscape. A traditional turf grass lawn could cost anywhere between $170 and $320 for 100 square feet, which only covers the cost of sod and installation and does not include the maintenance. Misty's landscape is a great example of what we hope our recommendation can do to encourage other citizens to utilize native vegetation. Our recommendation is to change the current ordinance to encourage citizens and businesses to implement native vegetation into their landscape. As outlined further in our report, we would also like to see a percentage of government properties required to have native vegetation as an example to citizens as what a native landscape could look like. In an interview with Bill Sturm, he mentioned that not a lot of people know about the current exemption that Oshkosh has in place for native landscaping, as well as knowledge on native landscaping in general. By incorporating native vegetation into city buildings, landscapes, with a sign that says why it's there, the more people can learn about native landscaping as well as its benefits. The more knowledge the public has about native landscaping, the more likely they will be to incorporate native vegetation into their lawns. Changing the ordinance would then become beneficial so that incorporating native vegetation would be easy for homeowners. An incentive program could also be put in place to encourage homeowners to incorporate more native vegetation. An example would be of an incentive program could be the Residential Stormwater Utility Credit Policy, which Oshkosh already has in place. This policy uses credits to incentivize the use of rain barrels and rain gardens for a percentage off a resident's stormwater utility fee. We hope the Sustainability Advisory Board has found this information useful, and we use the information in our report to put our recommendations into action.
All right, so before we start, if you want to just flip over the sheet that you were just given, that has our handout, and that'll be useful in just a few moments here. So hello everyone. Tonight we're here to talk to you about a program that seeks to reduce single-use plastic in Oshkosh. My name is Caitlin, this is Mike, and this is Ellie. So to start, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our program proposal. So in 2016, enacted into ordinance was legislation AB 730, which created a ban on banning plastic in Wisconsin. With this, we have created the Plastic Pledge. The Plastic Pledge is a voluntary pledge that incentivizes local food and beverage establishments of Oshkosh to reduce their single-use plastic consumption in exchange for the utilization of our program decal. This decal can be displayed both storefront and online and represents their participation in sustainable efforts. Now Mike is going to talk to you a little bit why we focused on plastic as a problem.
Thank you, Caitlin. As we know, global plastic consumption is rising. Its applicability is endless, and consequently, its waste is endless. Improperly managed plastic waste ends up in landfills. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is one marine example. It is thrown to the side of the road and is often shipped to developing countries to be dumped anywhere, burned, and forgotten, if not turned into new products. Those products and other plastics are a huge part of our everyday lives. In turn, they create a large amount of plastic waste, a significant percentage not being properly managed and disposed of, as shown in the pie chart from the U.S. With over 80 active landfills in Wisconsin, this equates to thousands of tons annually reaching those landfills, as I will go through shortly, and an incalculable amount of money lost, since many types of plastics reach the landfill, but it is certain that billions of dollars are lost around the world annually. There are over 20 plastic manufacturers in the Fox Valley alone, and many more in the Midwest, contributing to this problem by fabricating plastic products that could eventually become obsolete, not to mention also using virgin materials and expelling more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. To combat some of these plastic waste issues, the Tri-County Partnership between Brown, Outagamie, and Winnebago counties established a state-of-the-art recycling facility capable of processing up to 100,000 tons of material annually to make automated collection, separation, and handling for plastic markets a seamless process. This 25-year agreement creates landfills at each county, now at Outagamie since the Winnebago landfill is capped. It's projected to be over $50 million in savings over those 25 years because of sharing existing resources and using those economies of scale by sharing landfill space in a single recycling facility instead of running independent operations, thus saving operational costs. Unfortunately, the process isn't exactly seamless, as over 1,000 tons of plastic escape into the Outagamie landfill annually, as shown under the recycling emblem. And now, Ellie will discuss environmental problems associated with plastic.
I'll speak first about the terrestrial issues with plastic waste. Nanoparticles of polyester, one of the most common types of plastic, have been shown to decrease the health of soil microbiome and therefore decrease the health of soil overall. There is also research that shows that as plastic breaks down under solar radiation, it releases greenhouse gases methane and ethylene. In aquatic ecosystems, the biggest issue I would like to speak with you about is ingestion. Organisms of all sizes can ingest plastic, causing many biological issues. Toxins in plastic can leach into an organism's systems and cause issues with development, endocrine dysfunction, and in some cases interfere with cell function. Plastic can also physically block an organism's intestines and create a false sense of satiety and interfere with egestion and the release of gastric enzymes. We created our plastic reductions program to revolve around the implementation of alternative materials and innovative policies. Restaurants that choose to take the pledge must apply to one of 3 tiers, specifically outlining what they plan to do to meet that tier's requirements. A list of possible materials and policies has been outlined on the handout provided to you. Establishments that meet the requirements of their pledge will be able to use a decal proclaiming their involvement with the program on their storefront and on marketing materials. The application will be a detailed plan based on the tier the establishment wishes to be a part of. To cover the cost of the physical decal to be used on the storefront, we do recommend a $5 application fee. At initial application, the establishment does not have to have begun implementing their plan, but they will be reviewed after 6 months to make sure they are abiding by their pledge. After this, reviews become annual. We recommend that the reviews be done by the SAB. We also recommend creating a community for those who would like to be a part of the pledge or who already are. Whether this be a Facebook group or email chain, it will be a valuable knowledge pool where establishments can go to for advice or to share new information. And now Caitlin will talk to you about our benchmarks.
So, to identify what operations would be most effective with this type of program, we looked at 3 initiatives with a similar proposition as ours. So after talking to all 3 representatives, Weston Wegner from Green Tier, Heidi Schultz from Travel Green, Wisconsin, and Sandy Smith from Protect Our Sands and Seas, we were able to identify that the most effective way for measuring a participant's sustainable efforts was to disperse a detailed survey that would identify what they've done and what they're continuing to seek to do. Using Protect Our Sand and Seas, we were most able to develop our project as their initiative says to reduce plastic stream in Ocean City and is designed to make it easier for businesses to make alternative switches, which is alternatively what we're trying to do here for the food and beverage establishments. Between Green Tier and Protect Our Sands and Seas, we were able to see that utilizing a tier system was the most effective because it gave people who want to start at a beginner level or at an expert level that opportunity to do so. And then really we wanted to know how these programs made their tier known both amongst customers and participants. So really it was done in 2 ways, one by word of mouth, so by customers visiting, seeing your participation, seeing the logo, they really spread it amongst community members. And the second was by competitors. So if one restaurant sees that another restaurant has this logo or is participating in this kind of event, they also want to participate, ensuring that they're up to par with their competitors. Next, we dispersed a community survey which we gained 71 respondents. The survey was given out at BMO Harris on Pearl Avenue, LA TAN Oshkosh, and the professional staff members of Career and Professional Development at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh. So from this, we have 3 findings that we thought should be highlighted to you all. So the first is, how strongly do you feel about having a straw with your beverage when visiting a restaurant? As you can see, a majority, say 63.4%, say neutral, I don't need one. This is extremely important because that's saying about 600 out of 1,000 straws that are dispersed are unwanted or undesired, and that's a huge majority. The second is, would you support an initiative that attempts to reduce single-use plastics in local restaurants of Oshkosh? Again, you can see that a majority of respondents identify that yes, absolutely. They would love to see this kind of program, so there's obviously the desire for something like this to be established in Oshkosh. Our last graph that we wanted to show you was, would you be willing to pay a small additional fee at a meal if restaurants' operations changed in order to reduce plastic use? This was really just to see if alternative items were extremely expensive and restaurants needed to increase that food price, if people would be willing to. And as we see, 50.7% say yes, absolutely. That 31% that identifies maybe, we discussed that probably if they would have known that it's about 3 to 5 cents per raise on their meal, that they would have known that it wasn't a drastic change and maybe would have voted otherwise, but as we can see, there's still a majority that say yes. Now Mike is going to talk to you about our stakeholders.
Our program was developed from our stakeholder feedback. Our 4 stakeholders all have their own reduction efforts, and we're very enthusiastic about this program should it get passed, but they want guidance to improve those efforts. One of the owners of Planet Perk, Kenneth Osmond, mentioned their establishment has taken numerous steps in reducing plastic waste consumption and continues to work with the city to further their efforts. Chris Larson, owner of Beckett's, said their restaurant only uses recyclable plastic cups in their banquet hall and is working to phase out plastic to-go utensils. The Hangar Bar and Grill, owned by mother-daughter duo Lisa and Brooke Marshall, also only use recyclable plastic cups in the outside area and is working to phase out plastic to-go utensils. Ryan Wolf, a relative of the owner of the Roxy Supper Club, mentioned that they phased out styrofoam to-go containers and cups and is keen on implementing other reduction efforts, but want guidance on what items to utilize and what's economically feasible, as margins are very important in the restaurant industry. Gauging info from these different kinds of operations, cafes, bars, and supper clubs, helped us in framing this program applicable to many different types of restaurants. And if this program is implemented, could hopefully encourage an array of participants while demonstrating Oshkosh's leadership and sustainable efforts. In conclusion, our project aligns with the Oshkosh Sustainability Plan, which states to reduce initial consumption, promote waste management awareness and reuse of materials, and to reduce the amount of materials diverted to landfills. We believe this is an effective program to achieve the Sustainability Advisory Board's goals, and working with the city faculty members and different restaurants could push this initiative even further. Thank you for listening to our proposal, and we welcome you all to listen to our final proposal.
I'm Kelly, this is Erin, and this is Elaine, and tonight we will be discussing farm-to-school programs. Farm to School is a program in which schools buy and feature locally produced farm fresh foods such as dairy, fruits, and vegetables in their menus. Schools may also incorporate nutrition-based curriculum and provide students with experiential learning opportunities such as farm visits, garden-based learning, and composting programs. When defining local, there is no standardized definition, but many consumers and policymakers consider local to be less than 200 to 300 miles away from a district's radius. This proposal is less directed to the Sustainability Advisory Board and more geared towards assisting local schools in starting their farm-to-school programs. This proposal is less directed to the Sustainability Advisory Board and more geared towards assisting local schools in starting their farm-to-school programs. We propose that the City of Oshkosh assist farm-to-school programs because they improve the overall health of the community by educating Oshkosh's youth on healthier food choices while supporting our local farmers. The current problem is that most Oshkosh schools do not utilize local food in their school lunch menus in grades K through 12, and 51% of our students are receiving free and reduced lunches. Instead, Oshkosh schools source all their food from a large food vendor. As a result, Oshkosh's children are not being provided with fresh produce from local farms. The lack of farm fresh produce denies these future citizens of Oshkosh an opportunity to learn about healthier and more diverse food options, as well as the opportunity to increase their knowledge of the large agricultural community that surrounds them. Farm-to-school programs promote the City of Oshkosh's sustainability plan by connecting students and their families back to the land. Additionally, utilizing local produce in our program would promote the production of local food by creating a greater demand. And educating particularly elementary school students promotes healthy living because it shows them best practice options that they can utilize for the rest of their lives. Now I will be turning it over to Erin to discuss stakeholders and benchmark cities.
Thank you, Kelly. Now we will cover the stakeholders. There are 4 primary stakeholders within farm-to-school programs our group identified, which are the farmers, food service administrative staff, food distributors, and the children themselves. Farmers are a necessity for our society, whether it be small or large-scale producers. Our group interviewed the owners of Olden Farms, who are Tracy and Richard Vins. This is a local small-scale farm that grows organic produce used in Green Bay's farm-to-school program. Food service administrative personnel play a major role in school lunch programs. These individuals order food for schools, manage food school budgets, along with other needs associated with school food issues. In the Oshkosh Area School District, there are 3 important positions in the administrative staff. First, the food service director, who is Michelle Stahman. Since Michelle has taken over as director, she's updated the menu, provided support with food for after-school programs, and started the Community Eligibility Provision, which is a program that offers free meals to all students in 12 schools here in Oshkosh. The next 2 positions didn't exist before Michelle took over, which are the Assistant Food Service Director, Nicole Howard, and the Nutrition Database Coordinator, Brianna Alfison. During our interview with Nicole and Bree, they informed us of their food distributors, which are Reinhardt Food Service and Gordon Food Service. And when bidding for a distributor, schools have to look for the lowest cost, quantity, and delivery availability. These factors follow what our research found when they interviewed food service directors. This leads us to our secondary stakeholders. We identified the secondary stakeholders as school principals, teachers, and parents within the school district. During our interview with Bree and Nicole from the Oshkosh School District Food Service Program, we found out they had begun a farm-to-school program themselves. They are still in the early process, but have contacted CESA 6 to assist with the grant writing process. This shows how nonprofit organizations are important to farm-to-school programs. We will show how much more valuable they are throughout this presentation. CESA 6 isn't the only nonprofit we believe will be associated with Oshkosh's food service program, as nutritional educators will be called upon to help educate children about local foods and proper nutrition. A few programs that we believe that may be interested in helping to provide this type of information is Growing Oshkosh and the United Way of Winnebago County, which leads us to our third type of stakeholder, which is a key stakeholder, who is Kristen Martenick, the marketing coordinator for Fifth Seasons Cooperative, who works with the Cooley Region Farm to School program in providing local produce. Kristen informed us that Fifth Seasons uses large-scale distributors such as Reinhart, U.S. Foods, and Cisco to transport their products. She stated how it would be impossible to do this without them, as Reinhart is an extremely important component of their distribution process. This information shows how large-scale distributors can be involved with local food sources and accessible with farm-to-school programs. Our expert stakeholder is Maggie Smith, who works with the La Crosse County Health Department and is the co-coordinator for the Cooley Region Farm-to-School program. Maggie informed us which grant helped initiate their program, which I will go into in more depth in the next slide. Maggie states a huge obstacle is the limited funding school districts have to provide meals. This information follows what Bree and Nicole were talking about with Oshkosh's own funding for school lunches and why are they trying to go with community eligibility provision, which helps limit cost. Maggie also stated a huge benefit of farm to school is often the exposure to foods, which may help children try different fruits and vegetables, which leads us to our benchmark city, La Crosse. La Crosse shares similar demographics to Oshkosh, such as population, income, and size. The Cooley Region Farm to School program has proven to be successful, as it has been operating since September of 2010 using its Harvest of the Month program, which other farm to school programs also use too. The Community's Putting Prevention to Work grant was issued by the CDC. This grant was then distributed to the Wisconsin Health Department, then to the La Crosse County Health Department, and to a local nonprofit organization, showing once again how important nonprofits are to farm-to-school programs. The Cooley Region Farm-to-School program has bipartisan support in the community, which is very helpful in securing funds and sponsorships to help implement and promote this type of program. Now, Elaine will talk about the barriers associated with this type of program.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Since we live in Wisconsin, seasonality is a barrier here, along with many other northern areas of the United States. Fall is harvest season, which means fresh foods may be hard to come by during the winter months. From our interviews, multiple sources stated that they use greenhouses to continually grow fresh produce year-round. This is one way to overcome seasonality. Another way is to freeze produce to ensure freshness. This is something Fifth Seasons Cooperative does to ensure availability year-round. Along with seasonality, another barrier is lack of kitchen resources, which is linked to the budgetary restraints our school district faces. Due to the size of our district, locations where food is processed, and limited resources available, the school cannot afford to purchase new equipment to process raw food. This is where the nonprofit CESA 6 comes in, because they are helping write a grant which will help purchase new kitchen equipment. However, it isn't just the equipment that costs money. The hiring of additional labor force will also raise costs. The costs the school district have for everything adds up. The district has to fund academics, food sources, staff, and more. As Nicole and Bree mentioned in our interview with them, their program and others are permitted a certain amount of monetary resources. This amount may not be able to cover all costs for the new items that the Food Service Administration may want to purchase. This leads us to cost. How do we pay for it? We understand that schools are severely underfunded as is, and are already lacking funding for other needs within the school and the cafeteria. This is where the importance of funding comes in, not only for the Farm to School program, but for other needs in the cafeteria within the school. The most available option for funding at this time is grants. A government-funded grant through the USDA states the Food and Nutrition Service anticipates awarding at least 2 grants with a combined total of $150,000 to eligible 501c3 nonprofit organizations working regionally to promote farm-to-school activities and support practitioners. This would require a partnership with a certified 501c3 nonprofit to acquire this specific grant and most others. Some additional ways to cut costs to acquire funding would be partnering with the UWO grant writing course or providing internship to UWO students that would both help UWO students gain experience and benefit Oshkosh Area School District when trying to acquire grants. Finding unique ways to implement a farm-to-school program will benefit the children of Oshkosh in more ways than one, but one of the most important benefits is the significance to their health. When children aren't provided with nutritious and healthy foods and instead are only given foods that are high in fats, sugars, and cholesterol, they can become obese. Some health problems children can face related to childhood obesity are high cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and many more. More than 3/4 of obese teenagers become obese adults. Obese adults face risks such as heart disease, stroke, and some types of cancer. In addition to physical health issues, obesity in children can also lead to body image issues. Obesity-related health issues can be greatly decreased with the fostering of good eating habits and encouraging physical activity. In school, kids are already provided with encouragement to be more active at recess and in gym class. So why not foster better eating habits by providing kids with local and nutritious foods? Here in Oshkosh, implementing more farm-to-school programs in elementary schools can start encouraging healthy eating habits in students, and the way to do this is to start small. Starting small within elementary schools will be most beneficial to this program because it will provide education and a stepping stone for future healthy eating habits within children. All right, and that concludes our presentations for the night. On the behalf of the UW Oshkosh Senior Seminar class, thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you to all of the groups. We greatly appreciate everything you've done for us. Now, don't go away or anything yet. We might have some questions. Shall we, board, I should ask, does anybody have any questions for anybody around the table here? Okay, I'm going to go by the groups then, okay? Okay. Shall we start with whatever my first notes were?
Solar Group?
Solar Group, yes. Let's start with Solar Group. Thank you. Do we have questions about the solar energy in the city?
Yes.
Yes.
You first.
Yeah.
Okay, Brad.
Hi. I'm curious about, so it seemed like the third-party financing, there were some barriers to that. Like what, I guess I'm just curious, like what are the ways to maybe get around those barriers, right? It seemed like Eagle Point was willing to sort of like, contend with We Energies. How do you see like kind of navigating those issues?
Third-party financing is just one way to finance solar projects. So grants and kind of distributing the cost over other departments is a way to also fund those projects. But we saw Eagle Point Solar fight the same kind of language barrier in the legislature in Iowa, and they won. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and now there's very distinct, clear language that allows for third-party financing for solar projects. Right now, how the Wisconsin State Legislature language is laid out, it's really broad, and it's only regulated utility companies can provide electric utility, especially to municipalities. And because that's all it really says, there's really no defining if Eagle Point Solar can be that utility provider at this point. Does that clear up a little bit?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Other solar?
Do you have any more?
I I gotta formulate it for a second, so go ahead.
Okay. I'm just curious where the idea came to start with the senior center. Was that a building that was like told to you guys to look into first, or did you guys come up with that on your own, and how did that decision kind of come about?
So the senior center proposal was actually a project that was done by the city planning department in May, and they contacted Sunvest, and Sunvest kind of on their own did a workup of the senior center. They figured out like where they put the panels and where they would, like the cost of how much it would like initially cost, how much savings it would be once installed and such. Yeah.
Okay, but your suggestion is to do the water treatment plant, City Hall, and the police station instead, or in addition to the senior center?
It could go either way. We use the senior center as like a really good example to base our project off, because like it was basically already done, and we kind of formulated off of that, because that will look similar to our formal project.
Okay.
I think you were able to get some of the cost information, right, for the senior center, and we didn't have some of the data available for the other buildings.
Right.
Although they may be better targets, so to speak.
Sounds good.
Just to kind of clarify too, we're not really our proposal isn't saying we should implement solar on those 3 buildings. We just know that those are really high energy intensive buildings within the city. And based on all of that information, we know that those are going to be the most successful solar projects. So those are just kind of good places to start. And then in our final our report that you guys will get a copy of, we'll have outlined a few examples within the city, breaking down that cost.
Sounds good.
Of course, we should do all the buildings, Vic.
Right. Like, wonder what they're saying.
Yes.
I have one question, Mark? When you were doing the analysis that you compared the 30-year savings, you had, I think it was 46,000 cost for solar versus 161, so $115,000 savings. Did you have any ability to do the capital cost for that, so to kind of show the life cycle cost, because that's a savings on utilities over 30 years? What was the capital investment up front for those panels?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but it is outlined in the report, and it shows kind of this is the initial investment, and over the 30 years, you'll save this much, and then there's a cost breakdown too. So that's just something to look for in the report.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have something else, Brad? Or?
No, I was just,
Okay.
Thank you, no.
Just cogitating, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about the regulated utility companies and sort of jumping back to what Representative Hintz said earlier about sort of implementing Executive Order 38, but no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the Solar Energy Group? Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions for the Native Landscaping Group? Yeah. Yeah. One of our favorite topics here, folks.
It sure is.
Who wants to go first?
You go ahead.
Go for it, Vic.
First off, wanted to just compliment your graphic with the roots. We used the exact same graphic in our Facebook posting about native planting, so nice job. Thank you. Where was I? Oh, the public opinion data. Where did that come from? Who was sampled for that? Public opinion.
I talked to Millers Bay leader Ruth McGinley about it.
Okay.
And she wasn't. I don't know. She kind of provided a general consensus.
Okay,
on that,
so it was feedback that she had gotten from her
and also,
work.
yeah, our initial research kind of.
Okay.
That direction too.
Sounds good. And then, did you guys look into at all the language around like what can be considered native versus non-native, digging into more of like what that would look like for us for implementation?
Yeah, we did, and that's something, again, we modeled off of other cities' ordinances. A really important thing that we saw was lacking in current ordinance is just a kind of vague wording. So I think it was Nina, actually, that had a really good use of, they provided examples of native plants that they really want to be promoted, examples of noxious weeds that had to be, that were not allowed in properties. So just kind of really, and I think it's in the handout as well, just trying to eliminate that broad wording.
Okay. I'm good.
Any other questions? Michelle?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I know you mentioned having educational tools such as signs. Is there anything else that was shown to be successful in your research for improving public opinion and education about native plants?
Well, the signs were, like Misty, I talked to her, she said that there was a big social incentive with just having the signs of showing people that this is a good landscape, I guess. And then also the bigger signs that really go into detail about the specifics of why certain species are good, why they're bad, and just educating people because it's not really known that much. So any information can sway them. There was one survey that they provided a more background on it, and that survey people were more in favor because they were more educated, so they were more in favor of native plants versus surveys that didn't provide that information.
And I'm sorry, I'll just jump in here. Actually, we found that the signs happen to be one of the biggest educational tools, just because, there's not a lot of time to kind of go out in the communities. And I know a lot of groups like the NRCS going out to schools and teaching the youth more about it, so they kind of grow up knowing more about that. With an interview with facilities management at UW Oshkosh, because there's a lot of native landscaping around the campus, she actually said that she'll get complaints about overgrown weeds, even though that's not the point. And then she'll go out there and put a sign saying that it's a Monarch Way station. And all of a sudden she'll get a bunch of compliments like, oh, what you're doing is so great. It's so good for the community. We should do this more often. So what she really suggested was the signs. And that's kind of what we're seeing everywhere is the signs just is an easy way, something simple you can just stick up.
It's always better when you understand what you're looking at, right? Yeah. On your page that was headed recommendations, you had a photo that has like a circular walkway around you know the one I mean?
Yeah.
You know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, do you know where that was taken? Was that from campus, or that's not in Misty's backyard, I take it? No? No? Was that just one you found somewhere?
Yeah.
Oh, darn, I wanted to go there. It looked really nice.
I think something similar like that is in Neenah, but don't.
The other picture on that slide was from Conservancy Park in Neenah, which is a really good example to look upon. It was just a patch of land that they implemented native prairie species, and there's just a path going through it, so it's like you're walking through a meadow. It's a really nice park.
We have one in Oshkosh, too. It's called Ken Roble Conservancy Park.
Okay.
And it's kind of behind the building that sells appliances and has the big guy standing there that's not holding his axe anymore, or whatever it used to be when I first moved to town. I don't know. You all know where that is, right? It's like saying, remember where the A&P store was? Bet nobody here does except maybe Steve.
I would know.
Yeah.
And Ken Roble's right by the old Snell Road landfill, too.
Yeah, thank you. That's better, yes. Any other questions for them on the landscaping ordinance?
Yeah, you had mentioned an exemption that Bill Sturm talked about. What was the exemption? Sorry, I just missed whatever that was.
Sorry. So the exemption is you have to apply for it through Oshkosh, and then the city reviews it, and then they'll either say you can or you cannot have your native landscape. Bill Sturm said a lot of people do not utilize it because they don't know about it, and we'd just like to, I guess, promote more native landscaping so more people do utilize it, except we're kind of trying to get away from the applying for the native landscape. You should just be able to incorporate more native vegetation until it's maybe a certain percentage of your yard. So.
Okay, thank you.
So is the exception then, is that reactionary or is that preemptive? Do you do that ahead of time and say, hey, I want to have more native landscaping in my yard? Or is that just if someone complains, you get a notice from the city that says, hey, your lawn's too long, and then you file the exemption that, hey, no, it's...
I believe it has to be beforehand.
Okay.
That's one of the things we're trying to tackle in this, that right now for a good example, whitewater, you can have up to 50% of your lawn covered, and then you file a notice with the city. And right now in Oshkosh, you have to file an application before you start anything, so it kind of halts the process before it even starts. So, yeah.
If you want to go over 8 inches.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, anyone? You must have done a good job. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the plastic pledge, I believe. I have to say, once again, that logo is awesome. I think when we adopt this program, as I'm sure we will eventually, we really need to use that logo, so that's okay, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't have that trademarked or anything? You're giving that to the city?
It's all yours.
It's all yours. Just wanted to be clear. Does anybody have any questions for the plastic pledge group?
How much was the fee? So you said there should be like a fee put in place?
So really the fee is for the like actual physical sticker that they can stick on the storefront. So we talked to David Moss from 4Imprint, and he got the price down to $1.40 per sticker. So the $5 application fee, which we presented, was for the sticker, but also to add to a fund, whether it be for labor costs or to assist in maintenance of the program.
Is that a reasonable cost?
$5 seems pretty reasonable.
Just checking.
Not a revenue generator.
And is that just an initial cost? Is there like an annual fee or re-up in the program or anything? Or yeah, you said there's an annual recertification, right? But the fee is like a one-time.
Yep, assuming they aren't going to need another sticker, because that was the reason, basically the only reason we had the fee was to cover the physical cost. So if they need a new decal for any reason, then maybe re-implementing that. But in our original program outline, we don't have it as a reoccurring fee.
And if they backslide, we're going to charge them for taking the sticker down. Vic?
Yeah, I have some questions. Just have to ask. It is called the Plastic Pledge. What is the sticker made out of?
Could be made of hemp.
Cool. Just curious if 4Imprint like had those capabilities to use.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I guess I didn't realize that was what you were asking. Yes. So I asked him about that personally, and he said that they are coming out with like alternatives to just the plastic option. So it might cost a little more than the $1.40, but either way, he said that because it's working with the city, that he'll work. If you contact David Moss specifically, which he's one of the managers at 4Imprint for production, that he will work out a special rate for the city.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question I had on your sheet here, there's items made with compostable plant-based plastics, and then it says which must be sent to a composting facility. Do we know, does the Tri-County facility have that capability, or do you know of a composting facility?
As far as we found in our research, there's not one close,
Okay.
Which is the issue with using those, plant-based plastic and plastic
Correct.
alternatives, is that a lot of times if you don't have the facilities to properly dispose of them, it's the same as using actual plastic, because it just goes to the landfill and sits there.
Correct.
So that is a really big obstacle, which is why we were kind of like, we wanted to be more broad with the alternative materials, because we don't want to pigeonhole people into that if they don't
Sure.
have access to that composting facility, which in our area, it seems like is a pretty big barrier to using those.
Okay. So maybe don't put that in the platinum level. Keep those more in like the green level.
Yeah, if they can prove that they have a way to send those to a composting facility, then that's different, I think. But if they're just sending it right to the landfill, then that's kind of
Defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
If I can make one suggestion, I would just remove the compostable plastics entirely. In working with Brian Lingoff, our biogas manager on campus, across the industry, compostable plastics are becoming, less and less,
Not very
favorable.
viable.
Yes, no, they're basically very expensive material that does not break down in industrial composting facilities.
Yeah, it's a big greenwashing initiative.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have one last question.
Okay, Vic, go for it.
Did you guys see it in any of your research, any issues with like hygiene initiatives? I know there's like a balance between like reusable things and then like human health. So like if you're rewashing all of these like forks, spoons, knives, etc., how well are they being washed versus being reused versus like plastic throwaway products are obviously like very hygienic because it's a single-use item. Did you guys come across any research or pushback in any public opinion with that?
I personally didn't see any.
Okay.
There wasn't really any pushback. If anything, we talked to one brewery out of Milwaukee who really like used the reusable as like a fun thing. So if you took like a tour with them, you got to take home a reusable cup. Like if you used one of their reusables there versus using a plastic walk around cup. So really they said that they never saw any like of the, now that you say that, I could see where that would be a thing, but like, no one ever mentioned that. More it was just finding those innovative ways to make people like excited about them using the reusable items.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mark?
I appreciate you giving the information about the plastic pledge. You had mentioned that the SAB would be administering the program. They're a group of volunteers. How much work would you anticipate to, because it sounds like the sticker is the easy part. You know, it's checking to confirm that these groups have earned their recertification. And how would you envision that taking place? Because that seems to be a little bit of administratively burdensome. And since I'm in charge of administration, I'm kind of interested in administratively burdensome stuff. So did you take a look at that? And I'm just curious as what your thoughts were on that.
Okay. So really that was one part that I questioned Weston Wegner from the Wisconsin DNR, just because that's one thing they're doing in their program is they do the dispersal of the survey and then they do an annual checkup to see, are you maintaining this? He said that originally what they started with was like a site visit and it was very burdensome. So using the survey was really a way that was much more effective for them to go through and then still be able to not let them like greenwash away their efforts and things like that. So he said it wasn't labor intensive because it was questions that were detailed enough to find out the like information that was required for what they're knowing for sustainable efforts. It really just took the time for someone to just sit down and read the survey itself. But in terms of labor, he said it was much more, and as well as Heidi from Green Travel or Travel Green Wisconsin, she also said that it wasn't labor intensive switching to the survey. It just took like a few hours every year for someone to review it, but switching from the site visit was much more effective than not, if that makes sense.
Just one thing, I was really interested in the slide you had. So it's kind of a question and comment, because I really like the slide. It was about the 267.8 tons in 2017, of which 13.2% was plastic. Do you have a trend on that? Because I think that would really help hit home with people. If that trend's going up, it demonstrates we need to reverse that trend. Did you see anything, or you have some statistics out there? Because that usually those trends are the ones that capture the public's attention.
Well, to address that, not exactly. We just noticed that there is a global plastic consumption. It's rising annually, and this could be a great program to help reduce it in the Oshkosh area, we believe.
I'm sure it's out there. It's just a matter of just getting the word out there, because, I mean, 13.2% is pretty heavy. I mean, that's, and I would bet if you took a look at the year 2000, just did a snapshot from 17 years prior to this, I bet it's significantly less, and then it's trending up. So the idea is to stem that tide.
Right, like the slide with the Outagamie landfill plastics is steadily increasing yearly.
What's being thrown away?
Oh yeah,
that part.
Yeah.
Well, I salute all the nonprofit groups in town who have been giving away those canvas grocery bags at the farmers market. I got a whole colorful array of them in the back of my car, so I can take them to the grocery store. So that's a wonderful trend. So if you're part of a nonprofit group and you haven't done it yet, well, you may want to consider it. It's a great giveaway.
And they're available from 4Imprint. We should talk to David
Just a little
Moss, right?
commercial.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for the Plastic Pledge group?
Yeah.
Michelle?
I don't know, did I miss this part? Was there talk about, besides just the plant-based plastic, was there a look at to-go containers that were made out of more of like a paper kind of material? I don't know if there's like a liner that breaks down. I know that there are some places where I've gotten those, that are, I would assume consume recyclable if you're able to, rinse them if, you're keen on doing that before you recycle something? Or, obviously that would break down better in a compostable facility. Did you look at that and what the perception is of that by consumers and by restaurants and things like that?
Yeah, good question. Well, all of our stakeholders, I believe, have switched from styrofoam to cardboard. They think it's sturdier. It doesn't make your food soggy, and I guess consumers like it as well.
Okay. Because I know I'd heard from, there was a restaurant in town that switched to those containers, but then, some people complained, but they said, well, we want to do this anyway, because it's what we should be doing. So I was just curious if you heard any pushback on those kind of containers.
In our report is like a really
Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. In our report is like a really thorough section on social perceptions towards alternatives, towards bans, towards voluntary programs like this. So from, you'll read it all in that part, but from what we saw, offering these voluntary options and switching things like that, initially there is a pushback because nobody really likes change that much. But after a little while and after they see more people joining in on it, communities saw that people were also saying, yeah, this isn't so bad. We're going to join on this trend. And then they, as their social peers started joining it as well, they also kind of followed trend too. So it's like once that chain of reaction started, it caused more people to adjust their opinions. So initially there definitely is a pushback because it's changed, but as it kind of rolled out, it showed that plastic alternatives had a positive feedback with it. Yeah.
Thank you. And one other question I had, so this is primarily just at local food and beverage establishments. It's not targeted towards grocery stores and things like that, correct?
So we initially tried to include franchised companies. We reached out to a few, and the initial problem we saw is that they don't have a lot of control with the products in their company. So we reached out to Applebee's, to Red Robin, and they said, we would love here in Oshkosh to implement this kind of thing, but we would have to go up to corporate. We would have to go talk to a lot of other stakeholders that isn't us. So right now it seemed very complex and dense, and not that they didn't want to join it. I don't know if they want to, but it's the latter versus the locally owned. They're able to take that control in their company and enable or implement that kind of thing. So I think that maybe it would be something if they saw the actual product and things like that, that they would talk to supervisors, but it was a little bit more tricky because they have that corporate headquarter.
Okay, anything else? Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that leaves us with the Farm to School group. Questions? No questions for them?
Do you have any information in regards to what the cost adder would be, if you sourced fruits and vegetables from locally, what the cost adder would be to the school food system, whether it's 20% or 50% or any information about that?
So whenever I spoke to Maggie Smith, the coordinator of the Cooley region, she didn't give me any information regarding that. What it was that they started with a grant, and that was to implement the program itself. With that is, I just found out today and couldn't put it into the into the item right now, is that they're actually the school, the community is funding it now. They're offer grants for it, so it is possible to do that. That will be in the final report, by the way. However, I don't believe I've come across that information. I can always speak to Maggie Smith and see if she can, because I think what you're asking for is the school, the food service directors of the school, which unfortunately we didn't get a hold of either one from another one, say even Green Bay that we know that are doing it, or the Cooley region. We didn't get a hold of those individuals. So unfortunately, I don't believe we can answer your question at this time. However, I can speak to, as I stated, speak to Maggie Smith and see if we can somehow try to find that information on that. You're welcome.
Misty?
Is the audience allowed to ask questions?
I think Misty's allowed to ask questions.
Did you guys ever talk to Danny Stoley with Growing Oshkosh about?
Yes,
her
I
farm?
spoke to her a few times. However, Danny is extremely busy,
Yes.
as you probably already know of. And we made plans like 3-4 different times, and unfortunately, due to time constraints and her scheduling, that we just could not get a hold of her. I'm still in the process of trying to interview her via email, because I feel that that's the best way to get a hold of her and to be able to get the information from her. However, at this time, we just haven't gotten a hold of her.
Okay.
When you spoke with Olden Produce, did they show an interest in the farm to school, or are they, I'm trying to remember, it was your group that spoke with them,
Yes.
right? Or are they already maxed out with what they're doing for local stores and things?
Kelly explained this because she was the one that interviewed them.
They said they were definitely interested.
Okay, good answer. Mark?
Yeah, as long as I don't want to step over any of it.
You're not.
CB, okay. Great presentation. I have a little bit of an interest in this topic because I've been part of a group of area employers that were convened by the Oshkosh and Fox Cities United Way. There's an initiative called Way to the Fox Cities, which quite honestly has not been going real well. And part of it is to reduce childhood obesity. So this is right in the wheelhouse of what they're talking about. Large employers, including all of the large health systems, are looking for a way to address childhood obesity, and they're renaming it Live Well Fox Cities, and they're getting the employers, large employers in the area, as well as the healthcare systems, to work on different initiatives associated with reducing childhood obesity. And one of the big initiatives is farm to school. So that certainly bodes well for the trend that you're capturing here. And I wish the best of luck to the programs. I think we had school representatives there. I believe the superintendent of the Menasha School District was on the group with me, representing schools, and so they're very receptive to this. So kudos to you for bringing up the issue. I think it's gonna catch on in the coming months.
Anybody else on the board? Questions?
Just for a clarification, it was the farm to schools exclusively for like fruits and vegetables and such, or?
Yes. For that it's basically to educate children about nutrition, because as we were saying, that obesity is a growing epidemic in our country, and that's due to processed foods and other items like that. However, it will be to, as Dr. Feldman told us in class one day, that he had one of his son's friends over, and they never had a carrot in their life. So, that's something that we need to change as a society. And for myself, that's unheard of, because I grew up on a farm and out in the country, so we had an apple tree and a few other fruits and vegetables out there, gardens and everything. So to myself, it's uncommon it's common for me to have that. However, for people that, there's different items that are there, financial reasons that people can't afford it, time restraints of families where they can't do it. So if we can educate children about it, then they can go ahead and have that education when they become adults and try to make better decisions.
It's another argument for planting fruit trees on every terrace in the city. Yes. Okay. Anything else? Well, great. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you all again for giving your time. I know you had a long meeting.
Well, major kudos to all of you and for putting up with our questions, and we're very much looking forward to the reports, of course. So thank you. And yes, thank you for coming, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for coming, Mark. And Jake's on our board. I expect to see him. Good night. Okay, we have just a couple of other points then. We have next on our agenda, pulling our attention back here, we have our social media discussion and action. Can you give us a report, Vic?
Sure. So this month, posts will be about electric vehicles, per discussed last month. Posts will be coming soon.
Excellent. And I think we got some material for some upcoming months here, don't you?
I
Were
would
you
say
taking
so.
notes like crazy?
Yes.
I especially like that start small with elementary schools. Did you catch that?
I sure did.
Get it?
That was cute.
Okay, so we're going fine with Facebook, and it is electric vehicles, which would be like my Tesla that's not here yet, right?
Right.
They want me to order it first, and then they want me to pay for it. These little stumbling blocks. Yeah. Okay, agenda items for future meetings. As a reminder, in January, we will be having our annual when we remember to do it, goal-setting session for next year. So please take time if, through the holidays when you have all that extra time and stuff. Look through your sustainability plan, see what it is that you might be interested in and working on next year so that we can include that in our goal setting. And I also have a speaker coming in for our February meeting. It'll be a green jobs, green housing initiative that he'll be speaking on. Is there anything else that we need to do in January that?
When do we talk about taking steps to implement some of the proposals here?
When do we get their reports? Usually a couple
of weeks from now, we'll get the reports.
Yeah.
We post those usually.
Finals are right around the
corner. A lot of work, and it seems like at least some of these are feasible. So
They definitely are, and that's
Yeah,
well.
last year we did it at the annual meeting, and that's how I got the bug in me to write the letter for the school district about idling vehicles.
when's the annual?
We'll have their information by the January meeting where we're looking at everything to set our goals for next year. And so then we'll be able to say which of, if any or all of these. Right,
Yes.
exactly.
I feel like
We can
once we
add
got them last
goals.
year, you sent them out via email maybe in
Yep.
mid-December or something.
Yep, we gave them to
Yeah.
everybody that you could, go through them. Because there literally will be hundreds of pages of information that those students are going to give us. They gave us a synopsis today, basically, of everything they've done. So it's always very interesting. I can hardly wait. Okay.
Update on the electric vehicles for our next meeting?
Yeah, that'll be in there. Yep.
For Jan, yeah, we moved, actually, because we knew tonight was going to run really long, we moved the updates for everything to next month, including, okay. So all our usual updates will happen in January, along with our goal setting, which will include the student seminar information. And then in February, we'll have a speaker, and I'm sure we'll come up with some more things next month that we're going to do in February. Okay, our next meeting is Monday, January 6th, right here. And I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Anybody want to go for a second along with that?
I'll second.
Okay, put down whoever you want.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right.